Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about silver again, and but basically I want to highlight the difference between armchair freedom and true freedom. You know, a lot of people are on the internet and, you know, they're commenting back and forth on different things, whatever the hell they say, right? And, but, you know, it's a hell of a lot different to be theorizing about something and then to have something in reality. To have something in reality means you are more or less independent. And, you know, that's actually been the American spirit all the way. You know, buying physical metals is a smart thing, but you don't go all into the metals. Now, I think Jim Rogers made a comment very recently that he prefers silver much more than gold. Now, the obvious reason is this. One has corrected a hell of a lot more than the other. That's the real obvious reason. You know, silver went from 48 to 47 or whatever it is, down to like 20 or below 20. That's the obvious reason. Whereas gold went from, you know, 1921 to 1250 or wherever it's sitting at, you know. That's the main reason. Gold didn't, you know, silver lost more than half its height. So he's talking, you'd rather have silver. You know, he may be, the thing is with Jim Rogers' advice, a lot of people look at this guy sometimes and they say, what is he saying? But he's already loaded down with metals. He already has them. You don't even know what he has. He could have stuff that's not, you know, I can tell you that a lot of stuff I've seen on where people's portfolios, like I don't even want to hint too much at this, but they can have a hell of a lot more than they're shown on their official personal balance sheet. And, you know, that's exactly what everybody does with precious metals too, don't they? Don't they? So, but Jim Rogers does recommend that. He says if he had to buy something today, he'd buy silver. He goes, I hope I'm smart enough to buy a whole bunch if it goes down from here. You know, he already has it though, you know. So, but for people who don't have it, you're probably missing the boat. But I want to talk a little bit about, you know, freedoms. You know, there's also like the one thing that's alien to a lot of people that aren't from the United States is that, you know, people who really understand what the United States is about, they understand the real core of it is the Bill of Rights and the division of power and the limitation of governments. And you can laugh at that. You say, oh, yeah, they're the NSA and the CIA. Well, certainly you do need these things up to a point. You know, it's just a matter of there has to be a watchdog over the watchers. You know, that's been the age-old problem going all the way back to the Romans. Who watches the watchers, right? But we do need a CIA and an NSA and all this other stuff. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you know, you can't be totally against that. And there has been rogue elements in the CIA that have done things. But that's not, by and large, the entire system. Whereas, if you compare the United States to Russia, the entire state, governmental state, on the top, is flat-out organized crime. It's that bad. And you got these armchair critics of the USA that are siding with that due to propaganda from Russia Today and stuff like that. Like they think, and they're glorifying one man. One man. See, that's an alien concept right there. That's why even when we had FDR, and, you know, which I don't really like him too much, he was like, you know, I'm not a fan of his, but you know, that was back in the World War II. He was elected a fourth term. They stopped that with an amendment to the Constitution. So there's only 2 terms. But the thing is, with the United States, it's like you have the Bill of Rights. You know, if you don't like the president, you don't like this person or whatever, they could be a cockroach on the moon for all you care. The thing is, everybody sticks with the Bill of Rights, which you don't violate other people's rights. That's what the whole deal is. Everybody's conscious of this. It is the actual law of the land. Even though it's not enforced perfectly, it is the law of the land. And we don't really, you know, despite the shortcomings of our president say we have, he does not openly advocate, like Vladimir Putin, that people have way too many freedoms on the internet. And I'm going to say this, in Russia, most people don't even have the internet. and most people don't even drive a car. So what they're being fed, who the hell knows? It's all from the state. So I just want to say is that when you're talking about freedom and independence, it has to be real and also in a physical way. And silver is part of that. Silver is part of it. You know, actually another thing that's part of it is the gun. The gun. The Second Amendment to the United States, and also the First Amendment to the United States, which is the right to actually express your opinions on matters. You know, in Russia, it's like if you got an openly vocal critic on Vladimir Putin, he will be silenced. He will be silenced. That's how it goes in Russia. That's why he's popular. So there's armchair freedom and there's real freedom. In the United States, we actually have a lot more real freedom than anywhere in the world. What I suspect highly is that behind much of the major alternative media, such as Alex Jones, David Icke, We Are Change, and all this other garbage, that it is basically controlled from the top. They're making you want to change the system, whereas the system's not broke. None at all. It's not broke at all. It's that we lack adherence to the system. And, you know, some of that going back to square one is, you know, we're not going to have a money based upon gold and silver, but we probably will have, the best thing to do is to have a money based upon a broad range of commodities. And actually, gold pretty closely follows, you know, the general inflation rate fairly well. Now, since gold pulled back and everything in the last couple of years, actually, in a realistic sense, in some ways, we are experiencing deflation. But there's so much money out there, so much money being held in the hands of the large banks, that at one point in time, when that money floodgates out of the hands of the large banks and gets into the actual general economy, we may have a rampant inflation. It could happen all at once. It could happen all at once. Now, I'm going to say this, you know, with some of these cryptocurrencies, I don't really like them, to tell you the truth, you know. It's cool that if you can make a fast dollar off of them, and the emphasis is dollar, but I really don't like them too much because somehow, I've just been aware of too many different things that the government was behind, and they say, no, the government wasn't behind it. And something smells, you know, I know J.P. Morgan was basically alerted to a story about J.P. Morgan coming out with their own cryptocurrency that basically is going to be major competition to Bitcoin. And I thought, wow, that's a good one. That's a good one. So, you know, maybe there's a little bit more to this cryptocurrency than you think. You know, like I said, I'm pretty much old school, but you don't put all your money into silver. That's ludicrous. I never said to do that, you know, but the thing is, you should have some, especially now. Especially now. I mean, even if it drops some more and hit a new low, I'm suspecting it's not going to because there's too many people in the long position now. But the thing is, even if it did drop to a new low, I don't know how easily you can get the physical stuff. I'm beginning to wonder about that. And maybe you should be, I think the majority of people, if they all try to jump in and get the physical stuff, if it dropped to a new low, they wouldn't be able to get it. Some would, and I think a lot wouldn't. A lot wouldn't. So you should be buying around this level if you don't have it. But if you do have a lot of it, you shouldn't buy more. You shouldn't keep adding unless it drops more, like what Jim Rogers is saying. But I suspect it's not going to really drop below that 18, like where the level it hit before. And you know, the thing is, just remember that part of the reason you're having silver is about freedom. And, you know, I'm also going to just relay something, too, just as a reminder. You know, like when we look back at history, you know, what happened in 1913, you had the income tax, basically the amendment to the Constitution that allowed the income tax. We had the Federal Reserve Act was passed and these type of things. Well, you know, a lot of people back then, you know, maybe they were fed up with what was going on in the Wall Street area in the East. And you know what they did as Americans? They went west. Now, unfortunately, maybe some 20 years later, they got caught up in a dust bowl. But, you know, all those people that went west and became homesteaders, they were thinking about freedom. They were thinking about freedom to live their own lives their own way they wanted. It's a lot more than just, being an armchair. I'm in an armchair right now, but, I'll tell you, most of the day I am actually physically working on a lot of stuff too, and exercising and, researching as much as I possibly can. And, but just remember that to be free, you have to be free physically. Physically. It's not something where some dictator or some leader sweet talks to you and has a nice image. That doesn't make you free. You're not free through a leader. You're free through your own actions. In other words, if what makes you free basically is economic freedom, and silver is part of that reason. And I just have to reiterate that it seems like in Russia, the concept of the Bill of Rights, for many people, it's totally alien to them. It's almost like they get behind Vladimir Putin. Now, I don't know if it's all of them. I mean, I think he's pretty damn popular over there due to the media and stuff. But, the one-way media. But the thing is, even if we had a leader like that in the United States that had like a very high popularity rating, that's not what we identify ourselves as being Americans. We identify ourselves as being Americans because of our way of life, which is the Bill of Rights in particular, and the limitations on government and the freedoms that we have. That's the difference. We don't go identify ourselves through a leader and say, oh, our leader is better than your leader. They're already missing the boat. And it seems that in Russia, if there's people that continually think like that, they're going to be stuck in the same czarist system they've been stuck in since hundreds of years ago. They used to have czars that freaking ran the whole damn place. Then they got oligarchs. Now they got freaking they had Stalin, then Lenin, then they had oligarchs, now they got Vladimir Putin. In America, we don't worship a leader. We don't worship a leader. And to actually have the actual means to be independent is partly through silver. Partly. Not solely. It's not your only savior. It's one aspect of many things. So, but I just want you to not lose faith in this metal, because actually now that, it's been down for so long, but this is very, very, very typical. It stays flat after it goes up to a hyperbolic height. Typically, when a silver it's just almost classic. It's classic as all hell. When it goes very hyperbolic and gets way ahead of itself, it often takes a fatal fast crash and then stays flat for an extremely long time, and it has these little peaks and ups and downs, and then all of a sudden it gets legs. Typically when silver gets legs is when oil and gold are in a high, strong bull run, and that is usually when there's major global tensions, especially in the Middle East. So, I mean, it's almost like silver's going to be a silver lining if there's dark clouds happening in the Middle East. That's probably what's going to happen. But I just want people to remember that, we are nothing like Russia in any way, shape, or form. Because, I think a lot of people that are in this mindset about getting behind one leader, I've totally missed the entire concept of what actual freedoms are. I could imagine a Russian going down the street and walking into a sporting goods store and saying, hey, I want an AK-47 for hunting. You think they'd get one? No. Not in a million years. I could imagine Russians openly blogging against Vladimir Putin without being investigated. You think that would happen? No. And I'm going to say this again, though, too, because I think there's a lot of... I think the Western elite, or whatever, the New World Order, globalist, whatever the hell it is, a lot of them are behind the major alternative media. They want you to reject this system. They're scamming you, man. They're scamming you all the way. So, you know, it's not the system that's broke. It's the fact that we're not using the system the way we should be. We don't need change. We just need to go back to the roots. The roots, the real roots. The roots that they've always been. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. But just stick with your investment. Jim Rogers, you know, who the hell is he, right? He says that he'd rather be buying silver than gold, but he's not exactly buying it right now. But the thing is, he already has the stuff. He already has the stuff. Me, myself, I'm not buying more silver because I got enough of this stuff. But I think that if it dropped, I'd buy more. I'd buy more. That's the way I'm thinking.